Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to reach post traumatic growth? Well, we got a good guest for you today. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls, how this whole dang thing started. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, go ahead and go do that now. Hit the alert button so you know when we go live. If you're on Facebook, go to a tribe of giants, and you can find a massive group of giants that support each other, love each other, and help each other through all the difficult things in life and celebrate each other's wins. What else do we got, Nick? What else is happening in our world these
Oh
days?
man, the holidays are coming up, so happy holidays. That's
Yeah,
that's
hey,
in the
everyone.
next few weeks here. I'm sure we'll see you before that. But in January, we have the SG groups that are launching, and so watch for those. We'll get information out on those on our website, on the Tribe of Giants and the other places. So you'll see those.
Those go through our 12 journeys that we created and
They,
help people along their
they
giant
do,
journey.
yeah, in specific ways.
Yeah.
So good news about today is we're with Daniel Blevins,
Wow.
and
Old Blevins?
there's the language of truckers, the language of sailors, and then the language of Daniel Blevins. And so be prepared. We might drop some F bombs today. So
Yay.
yeah, man, we're gonna dive into your bio a little bit. We're glad to have you on. Was there
Yeah,
anything
thank
you
you for
missed?
having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Ryan, did I miss anything?
No, you told us beforehand that there was about 72 Dans when he was growing up. So they ran out of Dans, and so they just started calling him Blevins.
And so
So
yeah,
that's where we're
we have
at.
free reign to call him whatever we want, but we'll probably go with Daniel, right? So he was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, grew up in an abusive environment. So very little guidance or support from adults, and had a strong urge as a child to not have anyone else feel that way. And so he did what he could to serve others. So he joined the military at age 17, deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, and South Korea. And after 10 years, transitioned to civilian and found himself starting over, physically hurt, alone, and with no support. And so instead of focusing on healing himself, he focused on others and instantly went to work in case managing homeless veterans after graduating college with honors. So he accomplished a lot, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars cycling across country, housed hundreds of veterans, created the first organized wellness program for veterans in Western Pennsylvania, and helped grow a nonprofit into one of the largest in the country. And then after 4 years, he was filled with pain, both physical and mental, and became jealous, envious, and resentful. Was filled with anger and hurt over the years of struggle and barely making it. And in 2019, quit his job, moved across the country, began walking a path to wellness. And so celebrating 2 years on that journey by climbing, or celebrated by climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. I'll get it here. Something that he thought would never be possible with the pain that he was experiencing. So currently he's on the PATH, PATHH guide for Boulder Crest Foundation. We'll put up a link for that soon. And he helps veterans and first responders who are struggling with PTSD and other symptoms, and teaches them how to achieve post-traumatic growth and wellness practices to self-regulate. Man, that's a hell of a bio. That is awesome. So thank you, man. Thanks for being on with us.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. We're going to dive into your journey full on. So we're going to go back in time. I want to talk about your childhood a little bit, looking at the abusive environment and what kind of triggered all of this. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things that when you're going through it, you don't fully realize, because you just think this is life. This is what life is. And then you grow, you have children, and you start looking back, and you knew it was bad, but you're like, oh, it was really bad. It was really, really bad,
Yeah.
So my mom was older in life when she had me. And I don't think she wanted anything to do with me from the moment that she was pregnant. I think maybe she thought this could be her way of being normal, of having a kid. But instantly she lost custody of me multiple times, but blamed me for everything she didn't do in life. I became her scapegoat because she was a giant failure. She was addicted to drugs. She chose drugs and alcohol over everything in life. But every marker of success that she didn't hit for herself became my fault because I was weighing her down. So she took that out on me. Very mentally abusive, and then physically as well.
Man. And so when you're growing up, I mean, that impacted you and your interaction with other kids, right? Not wanting others to experience that.
Absolutely. I would stay awake at night sometimes, just filled of guilt, like as if I had done something bad, because I couldn't fully grapple, what was going on. Couldn't tackle that problem. So I knew at a very young age, like I felt like shit. Let's not let other people feel this way. And that was kind of the beginning of it. And I spent, and it was a terrible childhood, and it's one that I wouldn't replicate for my kids or anybody else if I had the power to. But it did teach me a few things. Like I really found a love of nature because I was never home. You couldn't find me. I was outdoors doing things. But had I had a perfect childhood, I probably would have never done that. You would have never seen me outdoors. So it was terrible, but early on I found some great wellness practices to kind of get me through that moment in life.
I think it's interesting that a lot of our loves in life develop from our childhood. I grew up in nature. I grew up on 90 acres of land. We were poor. My mom luckily got that when my dad passed away. She was able to buy that land, and that's what we grew up on. We had horses that we took care of, but they weren't ours. But that laid a foundation for a love of nature, like you're saying. And, one of the things I hear in your story is that as kids, we're developing. I mean, we don't know what, how the world works. And so that's taught to us. And so to be raised in an environment like that, to start to see that that's the foundation for it. This is how the world works. It's your fault. Like that could really impact how you show up in your world. And so luckily there's this innateness in us that says, go find another way to feel good. Right. And so you get out in nature and you move away from that trauma and that experience, and you want others to feel that. And I think where I want to go with this is just reminding us as parents is that our kids are molded. They're starting to mold from the way that we treat them, and that can have an impact. And so how did that lay a foundation for you? I mean, being in that environment where you're verbally abused like that, did you hold that as this is who I am? Did it become your identity in a sense?
So it did become my identity, specifically the self-doubt, right?
Yeah.
I felt worthless all the time. So I literally was insecure about everything I did in life, from maintaining friendships to just doing schoolwork. I mean, literally every aspect, right? But it was a great example too of what not to be. So it started to lay my foundation principles, if you will. Like, I don't want to be an abusive asshole. I don't want to be addicted to drugs. I want to choose love over hate, things like that. So while almost destroying me by making me insanely insecure and nervous and filled with anxiety and depression, it really guided me through life as well.
Yeah. So I can imagine. So I was reading your bio and you graduated with honors. I graduated with honors. It seems like these things, that insecurity is a driver to perform, to overperform, right? If people could just see how good I'm doing, then I'll feel better. And then we accomplish that thing and it's phenomenal. And then we don't change. We feel the same inside, right? Like,
yep.
Still feel insecure. I still feel like shit. I still have anxiety, all that stuff. Is that accurate for you?
Oh, that's extremely accurate. And for me, it really changed to chasing happiness, because I would use all the hatred and anger I had mixed with the insecurity of I'll show you, I'll be better, to funnel that into every activity. So I crushed a lot of things in life. Did I ever feel great about it? No, I still felt like I could have done better.
Yeah.
But what did that lead me to was doing these big things, doing these big events, and just waiting for that moment where I crossed the finish line, or I got the honors, or I got the acknowledgement, and then momentary high, real long low after that.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's dive into that real long low. I mean, was this present your whole life, or was it from
it got worse? It was present.
Okay.
I was always trying to prove myself to myself, first of all, and then to show others, because I was filled with pettiness, jealousy, enviness, all those things from a young age, because I saw what other kids had and I didn't, and the way I was treated. and the desire to prove to others and prove to myself. So I would live in that forever.
Yeah.
And then once I completed a thing, I'd go right back to living in it. And that was 99% of the time. That only 1% was I ever on top in my own mind.
Yeah, I can relate, Ryan. I know you can relate to this. You have some thoughts come up around that?
Yeah, I've had similar things. I didn't have like a super crappy childhood. My parents were uh, pretty great. Kind of had a decent childhood. We were poor too, a little bit, but had a decent childhood. But as kids, where I was relating to Daniel was we come up with these operating systems as kids to try to justify or make sense of the world, the adult world, the real world. And those operating systems, it's through our lens at the time. And so, how are we supposed to know what we don't know? We don't know how to operate, and make sense of it all. So our brains come up with these uh, simple versions of an operating system that serve for a little while to protect us and keep us safe. And then over time, they a lot of times they can become destructive. I don't know if they always do, but they can become destructive or not serving the older you get, because you're still operating on those beliefs that may or may
Yeah.
not be true anymore, and so you're continually operating on those systems. And so that's what I was just sitting here thinking, like, God, I was always trying to prove myself to myself that I'm worthy, that I matter, that I'm worthy to keep. Like, I had some abandonment issues and some stuff like that, and people that have watched know about some of those things. But um, that's where I was relating with Daniel right then. Is I would find ways to escape, go to nature, go. Like, I like guns and hunting and fishing and camping, and then I just figured out really quickly to fill up my life with other things that then I didn't have to deal with the root causes of all of it
Yeah.
until I was about 40 years old. And dang
Till
near
today.
self-destructed.
Yeah.
Yeah, till right now. Thanks, Dan.
Right. What's interesting though is that it laid a foundation for who you are today. And these things that are being created around who you are couldn't have been there without you going through what you went through. It's like your version of life as it is kind of needed every facet of what was for you to become who you are today. And it's still going to evolve. And Daniel, I'd ask you on that. I mean, do you see that as true for you? Like, would you be where you are today, doing what you're doing today without those experiences?
Oh, that's definitely true. I just wish it didn't take me so long in life to learn that lesson.
It's like you wish there was some like easy button, hit the Staples easy button, and it just like, boom, you have like all the remembrance of all the things, but you didn't have to go through them, right?
Yeah, but then you'd show up unpacked. You wouldn't have anything ready. Like, you'd show up and you're like, "Hey, I'm here," and like, I'm so fucking unprepared. I can't think straight. So it's like these things prepared you to be able to handle it like you are. And yeah, part of you would want to avoid that, but it was that prepared you for this. And I mean, if we stay on that path, going back, that feeling of insecurity, I know there are people that are watching right now that can relate to this outside of us. I mean, we can all relate. I know they can relate. Is that, and maybe in the comments, if you're watching, post that, how this relates to you and how you experience that insecurity. But it pushes us to do more, to show up more. And it's incredible what we were able to create from that insecurity. So you joined the military. Let's go back. You're 17 years old. At 17, I wasn't even thinking. I was thinking about girls.
Oh, no,
I was thinking about girls. I thought the military would be a great place to get some.
Yeah. So you join the military and you get deployed, right? You go to Iraq and
I do, yeah. And luckily, a little later on in life, because I had got picked up to be a human research volunteer, because I had pushed myself so hard mentally and physically as a child and teenager. I was able to withstand the rigors of literally being a human test subject. So I got to stay there for a few years before being deployed. So I wasn't deployed until I was 21.
Yeah, wow. But I love this because I'm tying it in my mind, all these connections, right? I look at you, I have a conversation with you right now, and I feel this confidence, right? I can handle stuff. But inside there's this turmoil of insecurity, right? And the post-traumatic stress, PTSD, that's a challenge to manage in life. So on the surface, we have this vision of we got it together. Nobody would ever know. You will never see my weakness, right? But inside, we know our weakness. So you're going into this, and everybody on the outside is saying, man, this guy's got it together. I've never seen somebody perform like this. You're going into it like, I feel a little messy, I'd imagine. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I was wearing a giant mask, right? Wellness and confidence. And it's funny because there was only a handful of us that were full-time human research volunteers. So you got to be on the History Channel. You got to be in all the latest publications about technology and new tests in the Army. And if I wasn't in it, even though I was part of the test, my insecurities would be like, well, maybe I just don't look good enough. Maybe it's just me. Maybe they just simply picked somebody else, right? But instantly, like, obviously there's something wrong with me if I didn't make the publication.
Right. So, those stories. Yeah, they're impactful. Yeah. And they're the only ones that matter. I mean, it keeps you pushing. Like, well, I got to do more. I got to fill that next high, and then you don't. And so let's dive into your darkness a little bit. Let's talk about that stuff. If you're okay, just be as open as you want to be. You share what you want to share. I can understand with military experience and trauma that a lot of times it's held pretty sacred. And so you share what you feel comfortable sharing. But going into the military, is that where the PTSD started, or was that way before?
No, people used to always ask. I got out in 2012, and that was a big drawdown period. So just hundreds and hundreds of veterans returning to every city across America.
Yeah.
So people maybe felt like they wanted to reach out and get to know the veteran community and the military community a little more. So between 2012 and like 2014, I always got asked, did you kill people? What was it like? How bad's your PTSD? Genuinely questions of curiosity, just phrased wrong,
Right.
And one of the things I always told people was the military wasn't that bad compared to my childhood. Like, I kind of went in with PTSD, right? Yeah. So like, you sending me downrange is fine. I can handle that. I can live with that sort of thing, because that was my childhood, growing up on the streets and all that. So, and I used to say jokingly, right? It was one of those, like, there's some truth to it. But it was a joke, and I never fully went into my childhood. But what I came to realize was that wasn't a joke. That was me being honest and not realizing it at the time.
Yeah. How many, I would imagine a lot of people do that. About 15 million people a year in any given year have PTSD, diagnosable PTSD, which is a lot. That's a pretty good chunk of the population.
And a lot of the military comes in, they don't know it, but they come from similar backgrounds.
Yeah.
They come in with symptoms already: anxiety, depression, PTSD. They usually have it before going in.
A lot of times I would imagine they have similar backstories where they might have a rougher childhood and things like that, and are looking for a way to get out. And the military provides some of that naturally, because they might pay for school or some different things. So I'd imagine there's probably a higher concentration of people with maybe coming from broken homes that have maybe underprivileged, things like that. Would that sound accurate?
Yeah. Have you guys ever taken your ACE exam, the Adverse Childhood Experience exam?
No.
It's just a 10 question.
I would crush it.
Yeah. It's 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, like best childhood, 10 being the worst. So it's the 10 worst things that can happen to you as a child. And so they did a study on the military as a whole: Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, all those guys and girls. And the military on average had an ACE score that was between 2 and 3 times higher than their civilian counterparts, which higher ACE scores across the board, regardless of military service, lead to substance abuse, mental illness, risky behavior, all of that.
Yeah.
And I took mine. I'm at a 9, and most of the path guides that I teach with here are between a 7 and a 10. And I saw the comment. You can just Google the test: Adverse Childhood Experiences. It takes about 30 seconds to take the test.
Yeah. Man, just knowing that, though, I think most of us know. If you have any kind of trauma, even neglect, they're finding that neglect in childhood has the same impact as trauma. And so it creates complex PTSD in children and adults. And that's where it becomes problematic, is in adulthood. You're trying to manage relationships and work and all these social responsibilities, but you haven't learned to manage these interior behaviors. And so that's where it becomes problematic.
Which I think, Nick, that goes back to the, like you talked about masks. It's funny because a lot of times when we have these guests on, sometime during that week, that topic that like topics come up for me throughout the week, and then all of a sudden they're hit on Sunday morning by the guests, and it's the
Right.
weirdest synchronicities that happen. But we were talking last night. I was actually at Nicole's house, and we were talking about. I was with one of her friends, and we're going to have her on the show too in the new year, but she was talking about the masks that we wear, and what she does with her clients is she brings them in, and she's got thousands of magazines, just stacks of magazines, and these clients, not customers, they're not customers, clients come in, and she says, okay, I want you to make the outside of this mask represent how you see yourself, how you want to be viewed, these kinds of things. So they go through and clip out a ton of stuff and put it all over the mask. Then she has them flip it inside out, and I thought it was pretty powerful, because then it's just like a white blank, canvas. And sometimes we put on these masks of how we want to represent ourselves, right? When we go out into public and we're worried about the fear, the judgment, the shame, and we wear these masks and it could be in different groups of like different circles. It could be to different people. It could be to our parents. We show up one way. To our friends, we show up a different way. To our coworkers, we show up a different way, if that makes sense. And then, but we're so worried about, like, what's on the inside. I've been in this space where, for a long time, I was so worried about the judgments of others and what they would think. And I'm starting to learn, like, to show who I am on the inside, and that it's okay sometimes to not be okay. I've been not okay a fair amount of times, and then I've put on a mask to hide it. Sometimes people might feel like, and I don't know if Daniel, if you've ever felt this way, where you sit there and you're trying to help other people, where Ryan the Lion shows up and he's sitting in front of you right now, teaching you and talking to you and seemingly having it all together. And there's moments inside where, and it's not all the time, but there's moments where I'm a freaking mess inside, just like you. Like, there's some chaos, some trauma, some fear, some doubt, some worry that come up for me too. But what I found is, as I've taken off that mask and I've shared it and showed other people what's really on the inside of that mask, they can relate. They can, you shine a light on the shadow and the dark parts. I posted this the other day about the shadows and the things that are underneath the mask. When you shine that light, they go away. And the growth that can take place from that, and the people that come in to help love and support, it's amazing what happens. Now, you might have a few people that distance themselves. Daniel, you might be able to talk to, speak on some of that. Do you have some thoughts around all of that?
I do. Actually, and it takes courage to talk about what we look at as bad parts of ourselves, right? The insecurities, the jealousies, the anger, all that. And we live in an environment where if you want help, you can Google it online, and it's very positive thinking. You do these positive things, you're going to be fine. And what we do is we completely ignore the bad, what we look at as the bad parts of ourselves, right? All those bad emotions, all those negative emotions. And it's as much as it's important to focus on the good stuff, we have to recognize the bad stuff. That's there for a reason, right? The insecurity, the self-doubt, the hatred, the jealousy, the envy, that all exists for a reason.
Can be useful, right?
Can be useful in certain times, absolutely. And we have to recognize that it's human. It's okay that it's inside of us, and to normalize talking about those bad things, right? Instead of just always being, hey, it's fine, I've got some positive things, I'm going to get through this. No, let's talk about the bad things for a while, because that's normal. It's normal to hate. It is normal to feel like you're a piece of shit on the inside. That is a normal feeling. So let's normalize those feelings as well. We don't want to feed them. We don't want to make them any bigger than they are, but we need to understand they're a part of us, and for a very good reason.
There has to be some acceptance in that too. So we did a video on toxic positivity. We'll post that here for people to watch. But that toxic positivity is simply the idea that somebody's telling you their emotions and you neglect or you reject their emotion for something positive. Essentially, you're telling them, "Nah, you're great. You're an awesome human. Don't worry about that." But they're telling you their emotion, and usually it's for validation. And it's that validation that creates change, that acceptance of it, that, hey, it is what it is. It's okay to be not okay, is often more powerful than telling somebody, hey, you're awesome. You're a great person. Don't you ever forget that. Well, don't you realize I'm in it right now, forgetting it? Like, you have no idea. That's why I'm sharing it. And so I think people are looking for that validation. And when you can give them that space to just share openly what's going on for them, man, they do a lot of their own healing.
Yeah. Most people do. And that's a great point, right? My job, we are a guide. We are not therapists. We are not problem solvers.
Right.
We are here to listen and we are here to support. And that's it. 99% of the people that come through this program or programs similar to this come to their own solutions. They work through it on their own. They just need a safe space and somebody to listen to.
Yeah. There was a study done, and we talk about this pretty frequently, the Rat Park experiment, where they hooked rats on heroin. They were isolated. They were alone. There was no other rats in their community. They chose the heroin over food and water because it made them feel good. And a lot of the rats ended up dying. And they did a similar study where they put rats in a park with community, and there was heroin available, but not one went to the heroin. And it was that connection in that space. And that's where they tie it into the human behavior, is that when we have that acceptance, communication, community, safety, we don't need all these things. A lot of times we're just trying to numb out because the emotions are intense and there's nobody else to share it with or nobody else to talk to about it. And I think what I hear in your program is when you say you're a guide, you're not pulling people out of their shit.
No, you gotta pull yourself.
Yeah, they show up, they come to your space, you guide them through that space, they do their own work, but they pull themselves out of it, kind of like the Munchausen story. They pull themselves out of the quagmire.
Yeah, I put here that they're capable already. It's
Right.
in them. They're giant. Yeah. We talk about this all the time. Like, you're already a giant. You have the ability to be, do, or have anything that you want to do. Sometimes, and I'm sure this comes in, and it probably gets a little bit more. I want to say messy, but that's the wrong word. But sensitive. We'll go with sensitive. A little bit more sensitive when there's trauma, when there's all these, like PTSD, anxiety, depression, all these other things. It's a little bit, more sensitive.
Right.
But once you can show them that they can do it, once you can give them tools to see, oh, this is coming up for me. Okay, now what do I do? And it's just like anything. Like if you're going to play baseball, well, you're not freaking Barry Bonds like right out the gate. I don't know if Barry Bonds was the best example there, but you're not Babe Ruth or somebody, some great Mickey Mantle. You're not that right out of the gate. You start off and you might have to put it up on a tee and play t-ball and start learning to throw the ball. But you're still capable. You still have the ability, and the opportunity to be, something great, or be able to play the game of baseball. And it just takes practice and some tools and some learning how to play the game and manage the game. So, anyway, that was just kind of my thought on that.
On that. Yeah, no, it's spot on. We actually, one of the things that we always talk about is that for the most part, life is not hard. But life is filled with hard work, and you have to do the work. Because if you don't do the work, then life becomes hard. Then you get stuck in your symptoms. And you have to practice. You have to practice day in, day out with your tools, right? With yourself being the best version of you that you possibly can. But if you don't practice and you don't do the work, you're never going to grow. And that's the bottom line. So one of the things we like to do, we remind them, you are warriors. You've already, there's 5 domains of post-traumatic growth that all humans have been through, right? That have experienced really bad trauma in their life. And one of them is personal strength. So we kind of just remind them that, you already have personal strength. That's nothing we showed you here. That's nothing that we taught you. You survived 100% of your worst days so far. You have to remember that you're a warrior and that you're capable of this growth. And a lot of times that shift in how they view themselves and the world around them is enough to make them get into that healthy routine.
It's amazing how much an emotion and a belief will impact how we show up in our lives. I mean, if I have a thought and I have no attachment to that thought, then I have no emotion come up around that thought. And therefore, there's no impact. There's no action or inaction around it. Right. But if I have experiences where I have tied emotion to it and I create a cluster of experiences, those become beliefs. And those beliefs impact emotions, and those emotions impact my acting or non-acting. And a lot of times we get so stuck in our story, our perception that this is the way it is, life is hard. And we have all these experiences that support that, tied to emotions that become our beliefs, that we start to live as though that is truth. And all it is the story that we've anchored into and held dear because of past experiences. I mean, the reality is you've gone through what you've gone through. I've gone through what I've gone through. We've had people on the show that have gone through some stuff that is even more severe than either of us have gone through. And they've chosen to create a story that's different from what they went through, different from the story I would have told. So this is where I maybe want to dive in, is like, how do you manage that? If I were to hand that over to you, Daniel, like, how would you manage that if you're stuck in your story? How do you guys navigate that in your course?
Yeah. So one of the big things is, the difference between PTSD and post-traumatic growth is PTSD, the treatment for, which is great, right? We don't think this is an end all be all for treatments and programs. We believe very holistically, there's a bunch out there, use them all. But PTSD is a constant focus on the trauma and just the trauma or the series of traumas, whatever it may be, where post-traumatic growth focuses on the effect that trauma has in our life, right? Our belief about ourselves, about others, and the world around us. So one of the very first things we do is explain that whole concept of how events or a series of events can shift your entire worldviews and the views about yourself. So we really break that down to give people a little bit of an understanding.
Yeah.
And then we build from there, and we just keep going.
Yeah, I had a coaching call this morning, and we spent 2 hours around this, specifically around the belief systems that get in the way. And it was impactful because you see in the beginning, these stories come up and they're so heavy and intense that people start crying. They feel hopeless. Even thoughts of suicide come up, and unfortunately some people take their lives in that space. Right. And by the end of the conversation, there's this hope of like, wow, I see my story totally different and I have some hope. And that's kind of what we're all generating, is some hope that you can create it differently. You're creating it anyway. But the challenge is they're so stuck in that story that they can't see it any other way. And so I think navigating that is vital. Just recognizing that it's a practice. I love that you keep hitting on that it's a practice. And one thing I know about our brains and our bodies is that as we do things and repeat them, their body is designed to automate that, to make it easy for us so that we don't have to think about it. And so the oligodendrocytes, things like that, come in and support and create automation. Even within our body, we have muscle memory. We have what are called Schwann cells that are similar to our neurons. And they fire the same way because we created that neural pathway so repeatedly that it becomes automated. It's who we are now. It's no longer of who we're becoming. It's who we are. And then that creates our world differently. And so the idea of practice, what I love about practice is that there's room for mess up in practice. It's a game, right, Ryan? Like you're saying, it's T-ball, right? You start with T-ball, and that's where you move up, and so it becomes this place to play. Does that bring up anything in either one of you?
Well, absolutely, yeah. So one of the things we do, so there's 5 domains that all humans throughout history who haven't been consumed by their struggle, right? Because some people get consumed, they're stuck in the symptoms, and they never come out of it. Unfortunately, that's just the sad reality. But all of those who have gone through 5 domains of growth. Unbeknownst to them, most of the time, that's their body's way, biology of automatically processing it. But to practice at it so you keep growing, because life's going to keep hitting you, there's 5 phases. So one's that education, where you're learning about yourself, others, the effects of trauma, all that. The other one's regulation, to reduce stress. So we have practices that we teach day in, day out. We teach you 30 here on site. And the goal is maybe you find 5 that you like and you build it into your routine and you do it day in, day out, no matter what. And another big part of the phases is story, writing your story. a lot of veterans get stuck in the past. They're living on that one time they were deployed in those 2 firefights that they were in, because to them, that's the pinnacle of their story, and their story ended on that day. So what we do is we're warriors, first of all, because warriors, their story is from the cradle to the grave. And so there's nothing inherently wrong with the term veteran. We just don't want to be hung up in the past, looking in the rearview mirror. So we teach them that their story, you have to write it forward looking. Life can only be understood backwards, but it has to be lived forward. You absolutely have to keep writing your story until your day you die, with the practices, with the education, and living a life of service. And you just keep going through this cycle day in, day out.
So those five steps. So if you repeat those: education, regulation,
regulation, disclosure. That's huge, right?
Okay.
Having a safe and trusted environment, whether it's a friend or a fire team of 3 to 5 people that you trust and that you can talk about anything with. Being able to unload all the shit from your past and all the stuff you pick up on a daily basis without being judged.
Yeah.
So education, regulation, disclosure, story, writing a forward-looking story, right? For a lot of veterans, they get hung up on the greatest thing they're ever going to do in their life was 10 years ago. Right? And that's not true. Your best days of service are still ahead if you let them. Your best days of living are still ahead of you if you let them. So you got to find ways to serve. That's different for everybody. And then story, right? Yeah. Write your story.
So I'm going to post this up here so people can see it. So education, regulation, disclosure, story, and service, right? Like forward moving. And I think that's key is we're always in the now. We're always right here, wherever that is. Past, present's always been right here. In the past, we have evidence of it, right? Where energy once flowed. But we're here. And so what tends to happen, I know in the work of Lisa Feldman Barrett, she talks about the creation of emotions. Emotions are created by our thoughts. So they're our understanding of the world. And so, but what happens is we have all this experience behind us that comes in, and we have this pathway that's all this evidence for the way things are. And then, so when we move into the future, we move from that space of what already was, right? So it's not like we're acting in the present, we're acting from the remembered presence. Like we're only bringing in what we have as experience, which becomes our belief system, right? Those beliefs are our story with emotion. And that's the beauty of story, is it brings about emotion. I was sharing stories the other day and freaking crying from a story. Songs do that. Songs are stories. They bring up emotion. And so when you're talking about regulation, the thing about music and stories and things like this is that they can also help regulate those emotions in another direction. So when you're feeling down or angry or upset or defeated, music or story can bring you out and give you hope. Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. And my thought, and this is my theory or my hypothesis, right? Because I'm still testing this, is that emotion is key, and emotion is elicited by our stories that we're telling or listening to, right? And emotion is what gets us into action, forward or backward.
It is. And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems that I've seen. I've been doing this for, I guess, 10 years now. 10 years. And one of the biggest things I've seen is that the community that I've been serving has been taught it's not okay to have emotion.
Yeah.
It's just simply not okay. So you can't heal, you can't move forward, you can't honor your past. You can't plan for the future without emotion. It's just impossible.
Yeah. So the stoicism, right? That's stoicism. Don't feel your emotions. Just get over it. Buck up, right?
Yep. And it's needed advice at the time, but it is a terrible way to go through life.
Yeah. Why?
You miss that parts of being human.
Yeah.
And if you don't understand your emotions, you truly don't understand yourself. You don't understand who you are. You don't know how to properly build. So one of the biggest things that's been shown time and time again through human history, you already talked about it, is how important connection is, right?
Yeah.
Connection for humans. The problem is you cannot connect to others until you connect with yourself. And you cannot connect with yourself if you deny yourself emotion on a regular basis. Yeah. If you don't understand the emotions inside of you. And not necessarily that you have to control them, right, as part of regulation, but just understand them. And don't let them fully live your life at the same time, right? The anger. Veterans are allowed to have 2 emotions, anger and rage. right? So just don't be fully consumed and let that guide everything in your life.
Yeah.
You know, there's an interesting study. It's still going on, started in the 30s in Harvard, about what makes humans happy, right? The key to wellness in human life. And they got the answer in the 40s, but they also were Harvard in the 30s, filled of upper middle class to rich white people, right? So maybe not the best people to ask about human wellness when you have most of the country at that time living in poverty. So they added people from the south side of Boston, from Southeast, very poor, low-income families to the same study. And both these studies still to this day run congruently. And what's interesting, they both have the same answer as to what is going to be the overall deciding factor in optimal human wellness, and that is connection. That if you don't have a connection in this life, that it is truly, for most people, not worth living.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing they seek out, is connection with others. And you have to be connected to yourself before you can make an honest connection with others.
Yes, man, that's beautiful. I mean, I think of that from the idea of our tribe. We have our tribe of giants, right? And there's connection within that, similarities, differences, but we have a connection. We have a space where we can come in and talk about whatever's going on for us. Isolation, they've found in other studies that isolation is one of those things that will kill the human. I mean, emotionally, physically, it'll kill a human to be isolated completely. And that's why isolation is such a severe punishment in prison, is because it takes you and disconnects you from any kind of community, any kind of connection at all. Even now, I feel lucky that we've got social media, because we might be shut off from the world in some days, and some of us are. There are people within our tribe they're isolated. They're in their homes. They can't get out. They can't travel. And so thankfully they still have a connection with the social media. I mean, that's a blessing, seriously, because it could be a lot worse. You could be isolated and have no connection. That would be a tough one.
Yeah, like 95% of my connections are virtual nowadays.
Right.
It's crazy.
But we don't think about how important that is. I mean, as much of an introvert as I am, I still need my people. And I still need that connection. Even if it was just one or two people, I still need that connection with somebody.
Yeah, Hugh makes a good point here. Isolation creates a safe place from the damage going on.
Yeah. But in your experience, Daniel, I mean, with people that you've worked with, the more isolated they become, does that become more damaging for them in their life?
It becomes extremely damaging. And Hugh makes a great point, right? One of the things that when we work with these groups, we put a positive 3 to 5 in front of them.
Yeah.
We let them know, you built those walls for a reason, and there's probably some people you need to cut out of your lives. We're not going to tell you who. You probably already know. But an important part with having a very healthy, positive support system is not letting the toxic people in. And sometimes that's family, right? Sometimes it's the people we want the most in our lives, but are the absolute worst for us. Right. And that is a really hard part of growth, is cutting people out and moving on.
Yeah. Recognizing it though, because we'll ignore it, because of connection. We'll ignore it because it's a form of connection, even though it might be toxic. It's still something, it creates that. Man, my mind is all over the place with this, because it's PTSD. It's a total body experience. Trauma is stored everywhere in the body. It's not just a brain thing. And so having connection is one of those things that you feel it physically throughout your body. One of the things that we don't do that animals do is shake after a trauma. We don't shake. And that's one of the things they're finding, is that shaking of the body allows the emotions to be released in addition to talking it through. Have you guys done anything around that?
So one of the things, so what we'll do is we focus mind, body, finances, because in the warrior community, I'm firsthand testimony of this, we're pretty bad with finances, right? Because we buy an impulse, and that's what we do, and spiritual. So we find wellness practices in those areas that really help. And I don't want to go through all the wellness practices. It's 30, and I want to leave a little bit of surprise for the program when you come here. Because the more information you have coming here, the harder it is, because now we got to fight with your own misconceptions on things, which is normal, right? We want to learn and study ahead. but it doesn't always benefit us to be more beneficial to be in the moment. But some of the wellness practices we do for mind and spirit very much create a physical release of stress for all over the body.
Yeah. So it's a whole body thing, which I think is with PTSD, it's got to be for growth. It's got to be a whole body. And by body, I mean, you bring in spirit too.
Yeah, spirit's huge.
Yeah.
Nobody joined the military to get rich, right? Or the first responders. I can't think of a single person who did. And we mentioned that a lot of people come from shitty childhoods.
Yeah.
But spirits are huge because of it, right? They live to serve. They want to protect others. They've got a huge spirit on the inside, and maintaining that is one of the most important things for their growth moving forward. So we really focus on their spirit here.
Yeah. I mean, giving meaning to life, that would be part of that. The whole purpose for anything. I could see how coming into a space where you not only have space to be you fully, right? So we go back to you're getting the education, but you're also learning to regulate those emotions. And then you're being honest. Like the honesty is owning your story, whatever is going on for you. That's what you're sharing. So when you're talking about disclosure, you're opening up about what's really at play in here, and having the space to do that is vital. Because I know there are people in my life, I cannot tell them anything about what's going on inside of me. There is no space for it in their world. And so I do that with other people. And so getting into the story and rewriting that, reframing it. I mean, that's what you're talking about, is reframing what you're telling yourself. And then practicing that through service, not only of yourself, but others. And you're saying you can't even serve others until you serve yourself.
Absolutely. It's like on a plane when the oxygen mask drop, right?
Yeah.
You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before anyone else, because you'll just pass out, and so will they. Right. Taking both people down with you, and your attempt to serve others before fully serving yourself.
Yeah. A lot of people on the show will probably say, well, I feel guilty.
Everyone feels guilty.
Yeah.
This is one of the hardest parts, is telling people to keep the focus on yourself throughout all this. One, you deserve it, right? A lot of people feel undeserving, and that their life of service means just neglecting themselves and making sure everyone else is okay. So there's two bits of advice I always give for this. One is you have to unfuck yourself, right? However that looks. You've got to unfuck yourself, because we all come in with traumas. We all come in with symptoms. But two, keep the focus on you.
Yeah.
You're the one who's going through your life. You're the one who's getting these trainings. You're the one who's going to decide what practices work and don't. Always keep the focus on you. And through that, you can serve everybody else.
Let me ask you this. So I'm having a vision here of communication, right? I think of an antenna. If you're in the Army, right, and you were in the Army, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So in the Army, communication is essential. I mean, that's what the Army does, right? Is communication. Yep. So if you have an antenna that is a little bit caked up, dirty, bent, out of shape, or some form, it's not going to broadcast or receive.
Absolutely.
Right? And so when you have that antenna and you find that there's an issue with the antenna, what do you guys do in the Army?
Service it instantly. Divert all the manpower to get the commo up and running. Because without commo, you're not fighting. Without commo, you're not going outside the wire.
Yeah. So the very first priority is to clear that antenna.
Yep.
That communication. And so when we're broadcasting, when we're thinking, I want to serve others, you can't serve others if your antenna is broken. It's really hard. And
Absolutely.
Part of healing that antenna is serving others, but it's mostly cleaning it up and getting it prepared so that you can actually broadcast out. And it's not a thing in our case where you wait until that's done before you start serving others. It's actually you're serving while you're working on yourself, but you're constantly cleaning that antenna.
Yeah,
is that a good analogy? Or
that is a great analogy. And another.
That was the worst analogy I've ever heard, Nick. I'm just kidding. It was amazing. We like to give each other shit. Sorry.
And part of that's defining service, right? Because we are very big picture people in this community for the most part. So we think service, cycling across the country to raise over $100,000 for homeless veterans. In my mind, that was service.
Yeah.
I could have probably had just as good of impact on someone if I talked to my elderly neighbor and brought her a bag of groceries once. Service doesn't have to be this huge thing. that affects hundreds of thousands of people. You can just serve in one person's life, two people's lives.
The word serve, right? The word serve means to minister, to give aid, to give help. To deserve or to deserve, right, is to be of that. And so to be deserving is to be worthy of that, basically, of ministering of yourself. And so when somebody's willing to do that and minister and give aid to somebody else, well, to be deserving is simply that. It's within you. I mean, I would think that would be valuable. Like you said, it could look like biking across the country, but it could also be that conversation that's giving aid to somebody, you know?
I also want to make a distinction too, Nick. Like when I talk about the chalice or the cup being full, like and then overflowing to, you know, like that's like a healthy space. That's a good healthy space to come from. It's not that like you can't be of service when your cup's not full or that it's not valuable.
Right.
That's not what we're talking about. It's just you're part of it is in my mind is that you're robbing people of the full experience that they could have from you if you were healed or healing and full, and you're robbing yourself, you know, of what you could have, that healing, that growth, that fullness, and it could be causing you negative impacts that you're not aware of, that you're not seeing. And so, yeah, I mean, and Hugh talks about this. He just reminded us that you know, that hey, it's not that you don't have something in your cup. There's always something probably in your cup,
right?
But at the same time, I don't feel like you know it's might be detrimental or not healthy. You know, a lot of times. It's not
Right.
I
I see it as like taking off the mask. Like when you're open and honest about what's going on with you, you're able to come more fully into an experience with another human. So it's not once you take off that mask and you're disclosing and you're honest, well, you're not only honest with other people, you're honest with yourself, which is where the power comes from. That's your power supply. Mm-hmm. Because anytime we're trying to mask that, we muffle our power in a way. We put a cloak on it, right? And Daniel, you probably know this. If an antenna is covered, it's not going to signal very well.
No, and I'll tell you what, with me, and everyone's different. But so when my cup was empty and I was still serving, I didn't take it out on the people I was serving. You know, I still did my job to the best of my ability. I still housed homeless veterans, got them everything they needed, met on my free time. But what I did do was took it out on my family, right? I neglected them. I isolated from them because I wasn't healed myself and I wasn't working on myself.
Right.
So a lot of times when we're giving and don't have anything left to give, it's the people who don't deserve all of that negative attention that usually get it, right? Those bursts of anger or the isolation or the extreme hate, generally we take it out on people that have nothing to do with any of that. And for me, it was my family, right? Completely neglected them for years, just ignored them. I was there, but I wasn't there, you know?
Yeah.
Worked 7 days a week, kept them out of my life, never let them in, never disclosed, never talked about anything true with them.
Ryan, will you pull that comment back up from Hugh? You know, a lot of times we're not giving anybody anything. We're just reminding them that they already have it. You know, so giving them a cup is simply the idea that we're helping them to remember that they're worthy, you know, that they're worth it, that there's value in them. To remind them, not to give them that value. I can't give anybody value, but I can remind them of their value. And what was so challenging around PTSD is that is forgotten. I mean, you're so engulfed in that story that you don't feel like you're worthy. You feel like you're destroying your life. You're telling the story and you're seeing evidence of it show up. And so it just feels like there's never going to be a change, that there's no hope. And all we're doing, like in what you guys are providing over there and what we do with our show, is we're inspiring, we're breathing into you a possibility that you already have within you. All you have to do is breathe it in. Like breathe it in. And that's inspiration, like that, to breathe it in and take it on as though it's already there, just to activate it. Right. I mean, Daniel, do you teach anybody anything that's not already there?
No, we just, you know, everything this process of post-traumatic growth is inherently democratic. You have to go through it. You can't just read about it. You can't watch your friends do it and go through it. You have to go through it. And that is all you. We don't do anything. We give you some knowledge and we introduce you to a few wellness practices and show you what a healthy support system looks like, and show you what it means to be vulnerable, that you can be again, right? That's another big thing.
Yeah.
I don't think we can be vulnerable in our daily lives. But to go through it, to experience it, that's all on the inside. Yeah. You've already come in here with that capability.
So have you arrived?
So I'll tell you what I thought my arrival moment was, but I think it's something that you continually work on because you continually grow until the day you die. And I think that could be the depressing factor. Like, you'll reach it, but you're going to keep working on this for the next 50 years. I got bad news for you. This isn't just 3 weeks or 4 weeks and you're done. So life constantly going to be up and down. Even on your best days, you're going to have downs. For instance, small things. Last week, my PlayStation 4 blew. I live in Mexico. I use it for cable, for streaming, for the kids, all that. Went out, bought a Fire Stick because of the supply shortage. Couldn't get a new gaming console. Yesterday, came home. So 4 days ago, bought a Fire Stick. Yesterday, came home and the dog ate the Fire Stick. I don't even know how I got it. It's shocking, right? But like, that was a big hit. That's a big part of the nighttime routine. But to be okay with that, and that's a small thing, but to know you're going to get through it no matter what it is. When bad things happen and they don't elicit the same reaction that they used to.
Yeah.
Right. When you've given up, or they doesn't have that control over you, and you can respond healthily to it and understand that this might suck in the moment, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
But 2 weeks, 2 days, 2 months, whatever it is, life will be good again. And that's kind of where when
you know what I got out of that. Sorry to interrupt too. I was just thinking about the Fire Stick still. Like, I use that excuse all the time with my homework, but in this scenario, it was really true. Like, the dog really ate the Fire Stick.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens, I like the distinction though, that like we were just talking about you arriving, like, is this all perfect? Does this magically now come together because you biked across the United States and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars? Nope. The dog still can eat your damn Fire Stick. The PlayStation can still die.
Yeah.
Like, that's life just keeps happening, people.
Keeps going. And when you can respond instead of reacting to an event, no matter how small or how big, that's when you've achieved it on some level.
Yeah. This is a little bit overused. It's cliche, right? Creation and reaction are the same letters. They're just in a different order. And so I love the idea of being able to create my life and create the stories. Sometimes I can't fully see it, so I need some inspiration from somebody else to help me see it. And it's not that I need it. I really enjoy that when somebody inspires me, and then I'm able to see that as a possibility for myself and then create it, right? Versus that I have no say in my life. Being reactionary is simply that I don't have a say. I'm at the whim of the wind, basically. And man, that could feel really defeating. And so what you're giving to people, I see, is just you're giving them hope. You're giving them a space to be them where they are right now in all of their mess. You're making it okay to be a little messy. And then you're offering tools for them to regulate themselves and to keep engaged and connected, because that's important. Because when they get disconnected, then they stop growing. And so, man, I'm blown away by it. Something we didn't know anything about coming into the show, and now here's one more tool that we can share with our group. It's beautiful. If as we wrap toward the end here, if you were to give some wisdom to yourself, looking back on your journey, right, going back to whatever this might be, the beginning of it, the start point, what would you share with yourself as a piece of wisdom to carry through that?
Yeah. So two areas. One, invest your money, right? Don't stop wasting it. You're going to have a family someday. But two, that's more of a joke. Two would be give yourself some grace, right? Forgive yourself. Don't hold on to that shame and guilt. Let it go. And that you're not alone, right? We struggle. Bad things happen to us, and we think we're the only ones. So we don't talk about it because no one can relate, right? I didn't talk to my family for years because they can't relate to me. My wife knows nothing. She came from a great childhood. She couldn't possibly understand what I'm going through, which makes me feel different, right? Which then leads me to isolate, which leads me to being alone, and I get stuck in this negative spiral.
Right.
Just talk to people, right? They understand. Everybody has traumas. Every single person on this planet. Nobody has a perfect life, no matter what it seems, no matter what they project on social media or anything else. Everybody has a trauma. You can relate to more people than you think.
Yeah.
And don't hold on to the shame and guilt, right? We all do things when we're in the struggle. Drink too much, we're angry too much, lie too much, whatever it is. You have to find a way to forgive yourself. Just forgive yourself and let it out.
Yeah, that this is something I'm learning too in a book I'm listening to. It's love and forgiveness go hand in hand. Judgment and fear go hand in hand. And it's amazing that we operate from those spaces and we can recognize where we're at based on the judgment or the forgiveness, right? That forgiveness, that giving grace to the experience is huge because we're so relentless on ourselves about failing or our shortcomings or our ideation of what it should look like, and then not living up to that and feeling shame and guilt around that. Just like letting that go, that forgiveness is loving it, accepting it as it is, and then moving forward. Like, that's huge.
It's huge. And then one more thing. I know I probably talked too much and taking up too much of time,
Not
but
at all.
Perfect.
I talked about chasing happiness and my success, right? And I would hold success on this one pinnacle and I reached it. And then what? I'm back down low. And the realization that success is a daily practice, right? So try to achieve success every day. And for us, what does that look like? Just doing better today than yesterday, right? Don't have my pinnacle of success be that one event or that one thing. Right. Just do better in your life, right? Or just don't fall back. Or if you do, give yourself grace when you do, right? Forgive yourself, move forward.
Yeah.
Which is something I've never done in the past. So even if I do go back, that's still successful, being able to recognize where I'm at and move.
You're still going to be advanced, right? You're still going to be expanded. You're still going to be further ahead just by that one thing, just one simple better than tomorrow or better than yesterday. And tomorrow is going to be better than today. Just even in a small degree, it's still a movement.
Yep, absolutely.
Ryan, any other thoughts from you at the moment?
Just quick, I just wanted to give gratitude and tell Daniel that I'm grateful to have been fed here today with his words of wisdom and the things that he's talked about. It's helped me to solidify some things in my world, and also to be able to learn some different ways of being. And I'm really grateful for his way of being. He is a giant. He's doing some amazing things. Daniel, thank you for serving today and for your service in the past as well, but also for continuing to serve. I see you as a giant, as somebody that is helping so many people, and that's valuable. It's needed. If there's anything that we can do to support or help along the way, please reach out and let us know. We'd love to have you back on at some point and continue some of these conversations that if you're open to more service and giving in the future. Would that be something you would be open to?
Oh yeah, definitely. I want to thank you for having me on, because one thing I learned early on, you never know who you're going to reach, right? Or how many lives you're going to save just by telling your story. So thank you for allowing me to come on. And I probably overshared.
Not at all.
This is exactly, you were right on time, man. And you're exactly where you needed to be. There are no accidents. We appreciate it.
I'm showing too. I've got 13 eyeballs, 13 emotions, 132 comments. Like, there's a lot of synchronicity in that. I'll go back and look at it, but man, you're making an impact already. You can see it through the comments here. And so for those that are watching, if you don't mind hanging on, Daniel, after we'll do a quick after show, but if you got to go, we'll jump off. But for those that are watching, thank you for watching. Remember, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You are right on time, no matter when that is. So keep stepping, keep showing up to these, keep pushing forward. Remember that you're a giant already, and we will see you in the next episode.
Love you too.
Love it.
Yes. That was great. We're still live on social media. We'll hang out for just a couple minutes and chat for just a sec. This a little more relaxed. Is that okay?
Yeah. It's perfect for me.
Yeah, sounds good.
This is where we could crack the jokes, and dude, that was awesome. I really like that.
Man, am I sure glad we ran into Nicole.
Yeah.
She's provided some amazing guests. So like phenomenal guests.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, it's been 10 years now, a little longer than that, just serving with her husband for, 6 months. You never know how life-changing that could be a decade down the road.
Fractal
fart.
Daniel's like, what?
Began, right?
Right.
Do you think, is there anything in the show that you might have missed that you wanted to share that maybe we skimmed over? Anything that came up?
So I think one of the things that I like to not harp on, but is talk about routine, right? That effective routine. Because a lot of the community that I serve doesn't have it. Their wellness practice is drinking, which throws off the whole thing. And that was mine for a long time. No judgment on my end, right? But just finding a routine that works for you, that you enjoy, so you can tackle life's everyday thing.
What does that look like? So like a routine, without me going into another show here, but I will.
No.
What is that?
One of the things I started to hint at, right, with the wellness practices.
Yeah.
But just like, because we get a lot of people that come out from very clinical settings, which is great, but they feel like they can't enjoy their day because everything is clinical and everything is monotonous, and it just kind of sucks.
It's mundane, right? It's like,
it's very mundane.
Checklist and
check the block type thing. So one of the things that we like to do here is, we show you 30 so you can find the 5 that you truly enjoy, and it's different for everyone. And then
go ahead. Keep all in.
Just build it into a routine that works for you.
What about ritual?
Yeah, so same kind of concept.
Yeah. More of a practice, like an emotional connection though, right? Like on the routine, you're finding the 5 that really connect with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I do. 5 works for me.
Yeah.
You'll get people that overachieve and try to stick all 30 in their schedule. Yeah. And then the routine falls to shit.
Right.
So quick. And they're left, why? Well, I can't believe I put 30 wellness practices into my day.
And I even did them 5 days.
I take up 23 out of the 24 available hours.
Yeah.
Day.
Right.
I'm surprised the rest of your life fell to shit after that.
Yeah. Weird. What are the pictures behind you?
So we do, sorry, I'm not used to the mirror. We do a wall of gratitude. So all of these are paintings, each separate one. Before a path, one of the path guides, one of the employees here will paint a painting. And then during path, each day we write one thing we're grateful for, because this can get very stressful. It can be overwhelming if you let it be. So one of the wellness practices we do, and you'll see mine is the multicolored one. I hate painting. I have a neuromuscular disease. My hands shake. It is the worst thing for me. But I did it, and it looks like a second grader did it, but I'm so proud of it because I've avoided art my entire life because of my hands.
I would imagine that you make a grown man cry, Daniel. There's a song, right? Like going through this program, do you see a lot of dudes just open up? And
we do. It's that instant release of emotion, because people have been told, both guys and girls, that you can't have emotions, right? The females can't have it because they're coming from a male-dominated environment where
crying in baseball.
Yeah, no crying in baseball. That is a perfect example, right? And the men can't have it because they feel the other men are judging them as well. So you get here, they cry, I cry, we all cry. It's good. It's a good cry.
Awesome. I cry a lot. Everybody on the show's like, right.
Yeah, it's hard too, because one of the skills warriors develop is being empathetic. You can read a room. It starts as threat perception. You read that energy, right? And then you become very empathetic to every other emotion as well. So sometimes it's hard when the tears are flowing not to be consumed by that emotion and also just let go yourself.
Well, how do you keep from going from crying to pity, right?
Yeah. So one of the things is healthy releases. So we'll focus on that. And I try to just let it all flow through me and right back out. I don't try to stay there for too long. But for a lot of these people, this is the first time they've talked about their childhood.
Right.
For myself, I'll keep the focus on me. It's the first time I ever talked about my childhood. So that was the first time I let it out, was in this kind of setting.
Huh.
And it was very liberating. So there was this moment of pity. It was very almost joyous. And I think that is the instance for most people, where it's more liberating than a pity part.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so man, the value of that, right? That crying can become a release versus an anchor. Because if you go into pity, then it becomes that I'm powerless, right? That you go into that languaging and that story of powerlessness. But man, having a release is like, now I'm free. Like, watch out, like, look what
we do a lot of things too to kind of shift your thinking as well. So even if you do go into pity, you're quickly kind of going to see the value of your struggle. That's one of the overarching theme here is turning your struggle into strength. So we work on that from day one.
I like that. Do we have any questions from the viewers, Ryan? Like,
no, just everybody's a crier that's on here apparently. We're bunch of criers. That's good. I love that.
Yeah,
it is good.
I remember as a kid being punished for crying. My older brothers would punch me, like, quit crying. I'd cry more, so.
Is that why Pride's always hitting you?
Yeah, it's so abusive, man.
It's not acceptable.
It's a sniffle.
Yeah.
And it's a thin line too, because even with my kids, if they're crying because they're in victim mode, or because they want to get something, I'm real quick to send them to their room.
Yeah.
So even that's hard to address, like, what crying is appropriate and what is not. That's something I struggle with as a father all the time.
Well, it's hooked right into our parasympathetic nervous system. It's a reset. The body resets through crying. And so to withhold it, man, you're not allowing your body to do the process, which is to release. That's what it's designed for. And so, that's I think it's powerful.
What is were you the oldest child?
I was an only child.
Only child.
Yeah. Thank God too, because I feel like I had just enough capacity to make it out of my childhood in a turn my struggle into positives. But if I was actively parenting other children, I don't know how well my life would have turned out or how long it would have taken me to get on this post-traumatic growth journey that I'm currently on.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And we're glad that you are, and that you're doing that, and that and I know as much as some of those experiences sucked really, really bad, they made you who you are right now at this moment, and there's so much gratitude for that for me right now. So thank you.
I could see that parentification too, creating that. Like you'd be worried about them, so you'd forget yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And it would keep you in there a little longer because you're not focused on healing you. And so, man, I think maybe there's some lesson inside of that, is that the more we neglect ourselves, the longer we're going to stay in our struggle. Like, I think,
absolutely.
Yeah. Does that ring true for you? Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the blessings my childhood did bring me is no parental supervision. I could do whatever I wanted. I could be gone for as long as I wanted. So I was able to become a long distance runner. I was able to go on 5-hour runs, do kickboxing, martial arts hours every day. No one questioned it. No one's like, you've been gone 6 hours. Where you been? So I was able to really focus on myself throughout all that too.
Huh. I like that. Any
other
other
paradox of
right.
Childhood made me a better person, so it's one of those things. But I think if I couldn't have done that, if I couldn't have spent 5 hours a day on myself, I would be absolutely destroyed right now.
Yeah. Man, interesting, right? It's a paradox.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. Any other thoughts? Anything you want to share?
Just that, one of the biggest things that I find, and I hinted at it, is that struggle is struggle, trauma is trauma, and we all have it. Let your story out. I get it that we don't want to put down that mask of perfection, and we don't want to be vulnerable because people have hurt us in our past.
Right.
But you would be amazing how many more connections you can make by telling your story than keeping it to yourself.
Yeah. I like that. I love that you feel complete. And then I ask you if there's anything else. I know that we could go for hours on it, but man, let's get you back on as a guest on the radio show if you're up for that.
Yeah, definitely.
And pick a topic and just keep diving in, because this was phenomenal. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Ryan, any other thoughts from you, man?
Hey, I'm just glad to have another friend. So, you seem like the type of guy when the shit hits the fan to be on your side. So that's what I try to do, is try to get a bunch of friends.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. And it's always great to, I don't want to say expand my network. That seems so cliche, but everyone talks about how negative social media is, how negative the world is. And that's simply not true. We see what we want to see. So I love being able to surround myself with people like you guys and everyone out there who works on themselves, makes a difference, and is generally positive.
Yeah, I like that. Who was it? It's not Jack Canfield, but one of them said that you don't see the world as it is, you see it as you are.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, good, man. Thank you so much. For those that are watching, catch us on the next episode. We'll be back on Thursday night with another great guest. And watch for the videos, because we're going to post a video here that applies right to this topic. So click on that and watch that. We'll keep you on YouTube as long as we can, honestly. So if you are on YouTube, that's where you'll catch that, not on Facebook. But guys, thank you. Make it a great day. We'll see you in another episode.
Thanks.